the last video, we implemented enemy attacking and a discard pile where defeated cards go. And in this video, we're going to work on player attacking, so you can choose a card on your battlefield to attack, and then choose a target on the opponent's field and have it attack that card. As always, the link to the series playlist will be in the description, and if you are subscribed, please consider doing me a favour and turning those notifications to all to help me with the YouTube algorithm. To get started, we're going to open our Battle Manager script, and we're going to come down to our destroy card function. And when a card is destroyed, we're moving it to the discard pile, but there's a couple lines we want to add in here. If the card owner here is player, then we want to add a line saying if card in player cards on battlefield. We want to check if that card is in the player cards on battlefield array, and if the card is on the battlefield, we will erase that card from the array since it's no longer on the battlefield. Then down here before between, we're going to get card.cardSlotCard is in, and then we're going to set the card in slot there to false. And here we'll also add a line saying card.cardSlotCard is in equals null, since the card is no longer in that slot. And the next thing we want to be able to do is select a card from our battlefield that we want to attack. If we open the input manager script, you can see down here where we click on a card, we're calling start drag function from card manager. Instead, we want to call a function called card clicked. So I'm going to go over to card manager and create a function called card clicked, and it's going to take in a card. Then in the input manager, I'm going to call card clicked instead of start drag. Then back in the card manager script, we're going to add some code to this card clicked function. We'll add an if condition to check if the card clicked is in a card slot, and if it is, that means it's on the battlefield and we can select it to attack. But we'll also add an else condition, so if it's not on the battlefield, we'll just call the start drag function and pass in card. Now if we've clicked one of our cards that's on the battlefield, we want to check if the opponent has any cards or not on the battlefield, and if they don't, we'll do a direct attack. And to check that, we can drag in our Battle Manager reference and check if the enemy cards on battlefield array .size is equal to 0. And for the direct attack, we already have that function set up in the Battle Manager, so we'll get another Battle Manager reference and we'll call direct attack. And for the attacking card, we'll pass in the card that we clicked on. And if we go into the Battle Manager, you can see that direct attack takes in the attacker, so we'll also pass in player in quotes. Then we want to add an else statement here, so if there is an opponent card on the battlefield, we will call a new function called select card for battle. Then we'll come down here and create this function, and where we're calling it, we want to pass in card, and then in the function itself, we'll take it in. Also up here after the player direct attacks, I'm going to return, just so the function doesn't run any more code after this line. Then up at the top of the script, I'm going to create a new variable called selected monster. Then down in the select card for battle function we created, we'll set selected monster equal to the card we're passing in. And I'll also set the card's position on the Y -20 from where it is, so that we know it's selected. Now before both of those lines, we want to add an if condition to check if there's already a selected monster. And if there is, we'll do one more check to check if the selected monster is the card that we just clicked. And if it is, we want to unselect it, so we'll set the Y position of the card +20 or down 20, and we'll set selected monster equal to null. Then we'll add an else condition, so if the selected monster is not the card we just clicked on. Then we'll set the selected monster's Y position back down so it looks unselected, and we'll set selected monster equal to the card we just clicked on. And then we'll set that card's position up 20 or -20. And we'll add an else down here, so if there isn't a selected monster, we'll run these last two lines of code. Before this will work, we're going to have to come down to our finish drag function, and this line we have where we're disabling the collision of the card being dragged. We're going to delete that line, and we'll give this a test then. And you can see that the card is getting some weird hover effects. And we'll fix that quickly by coming down to the onHovered over card function and adding an if condition to check if the card is in a card slot. And if it is, we'll return, so the function will end here. If we run this now to give it a test and we click on the card that's on the battlefield, you can see that we get an error because we said enemy cards on battlefield, this array, when it's actually called opponent cards on battlefield. So we'll fix that in our card clicked function. And if we give this a run now, you can see that we can play a card, and when we click it, it'll direct attack the opponent, and the opponent loses life points or health equal to the card's attack, which is amazing. But now let's make it so that a card can only attack once per turn. In our card clicked function, before we check if there's 0 cards in the opponent battlefield, I'm going to check if the card is in a new array called player cards that attacked this turn. I'm going to copy that name, and then I'm going to go over to our Battle Manager script, and I'll go up to the top and I'll declare that variable, and I'll assign it equal to empty square brackets because it's an array. And then back in the card manager, I'm going to drag in that Battle Manager reference before the array name, and I'll also change it to if card not in, because we only want to run the indented code if the card is not attacked already. And then I'll highlight the code below and press tab to indent it. And now we want to populate our player cards that attacked this turn array. So if we go to the direct attack function in the Battle Manager script, and we'll come down to this else statement, which is if the attacker is player, then we'll append the attacking card into the player cards that attacked this turn array. Then we'll come down to the just regular attack function and we'll create a new if statement at the top to check if the attacker is player, and if it is, we will once again append the attacking card into the player cards that attacked this turn array. And now we want to empty this array when the turn ends, so we'll go to the on end turn button pressed function and we'll add player cards that attack this turn equals, and we'll just set it to equal to 2 empty square brackets. So if we give this a run now, you can see that we can click the card and attack, but you might notice that sometimes when you click on the card nothing happens, and then sometimes when you click on the card it'll attack, and that is because the card slot collision is getting in the way. So sometimes you're clicking on the card, but sometimes you're clicking on the card slot. So we can fix this by disabling the card slot collision when we put a card in a slot. So we'll go to our card manager script and we'll go to our finish drag function where this code is handled. And we removed a line from here earlier that disabled the card collision. We're basically going to add that line back, but for card slot found instead of card being dragged. So we can run that again and verify that that problem is fixed. But you can see here when we try select a monster when there's opponent monster on the field, we get an error. And that's because we have card.position here, but we are supposed to change card.position.y. So I'm going to change that in the 4 places I have it in the select card for battle function. And now you can see if we give this a run and end our turn so the opponent plays something. Now if we play something, we can click it and select it and you can see it moves upwards, and then if we click that card again, it'll move back down and unselect. But there's still a couple things we have to do. So we are disabling the card slot collision when we place a card in a slot, but now we have to enable that collision again when the card leaves the slot. So in the battle manager, we'll come down to this destroy card function, and if the card owner is player, we will set the card.cardSlotCardIsIn's collision.disabled to false. And also, now that the player card is destroyed and moved over to the graveyard, it is no longer in a card slot, so you will be able to drag it around. So to prevent that, we're going to disable the card's collision. So we'll copy the collision line, but we'll change it to card.getNode, and we'll set that .disabled equal to true. Then down here in the else, so if the card to destroy belongs to the opponent, we want to check if the card to destroy is on the battlefield or is in the opponent cards on battlefield array. And if it is, we'll erase that card from the array since it's no longer on the battlefield. The next thing we'll do is we'll go into the card manager script and we'll create a new function called unselect selected monster. And in here, we'll firstly check if selected monster. And if there is, we'll set its position on the Y down 20 or plus 20. And then we'll set selected monster equal to null. And then we'll copy the name of this function. We'll go into our battle manager script. And when we press the button to end our turn, we'll call the function unselect selected monster from the card manager. We also don't want to be able to select a monster when it's the opponent turn, so in the battle manager script up at the top, I'm going to declare a new variable called isOpponent'sTurn, and I'll default it equal to false. And then we have to set that variable, so as soon as we press the end turn button, we can set isOpponent'sTurn to true. And then down here in the end opponent turn function, before we make the end turn button appear again, we'll set isOpponent'sTurn equal to false. Then, if we go to the card manager and go to the card clicked function, if the card is in a card slot, we're going to add another if statement and check if opponent's turn equals false, and we'll indent this code below. And then because that variable exists in the battle manager, we'll drag in our battle manager reference. If we give that a run now, you can see if we play a card and click on it, it gives us an error because in the battle manager we called the variable is opponent's turn, not opponent's turn, so let's fix that here. When we're playing this now, one more bug that we want to fix, you can see if I leave my cursor on a card when it's defeated and it moves over to the discard pile, you can see that it scales big when it's supposed to be small, so let's fix that. I'm going to go into the card script and create a new variable called defeated up at the top. Then we have to set this variable, so we'll come into the battle manager and in the destroy card function, if the card owner is player, we'll set card.defeated equal to true. And then back in the card script, actually I forgot to default this variable to false, we're going to set it defeated equal to false. And then to fix that bug, back in the card manager in the onHovered off card function, up at the top we can do an if check to make sure the card is not been defeated, and then we'll indent the following code so it only runs if it passes that if statement. And now if we run this and try to replicate that bug, you can see that it doesn't size up to big, it stays small, which is perfect. Now that we're able to select a monster on our side of the field, the next step to attacking an enemy monster is going to be giving the enemy cards collision and then knowing when we click on an enemy card. So if we open up the opponent card scene, we can right click on the root card node, add a new child node, add an area 2D, and then we'll right click on the area 2D and add a collision shape 2D. And if you've watched my videos before, you'll be very familiar with this setup. We'll change the shape property of collision shape 2D to a rectangle, and then we'll drag these orange points to fit it over the card. And then if we click on the area 2D, open the collision tab in the inspector, and have a look here. We have these layers and collision masks, and we're going to set ours to 4 on the layer and 4 on the mask, because 1, 2 and 3 are taken. I think 1 is card, 2 is slot, and 3 is deck, I'm pretty sure. And now if we open up the input manager script, if we come up to the top, you can see we have these const collision mask values. We're going to make a new constant called collision mask opponent card, and we'll set it equal to 8, which if you see here, we have our collision mask set to 4, but the value there is 8, and the value is the code number that we want. And then we'll come down here to where we're checking what kind of collision our click raycast hit, and we'll add an elif here, and we'll check if the result collision mask equals the new constant we just made, collision mask opponent card. And if it does, we want to call a function from the battle manager, so we'll drag in our battle manager reference there, and then we'll call a new function called enemy card selected, and don't forget to put that colon on the line above. And into this function we want to pass in the card that we clicked on, which is this bit here. And now we just have to go into the battle manager and create that function and make sure to take in that card. Now that card that we're passing in is the defending card, or the card being attacked, but we actually have to get the card that is attacking, so we'll create a new variable called attacking card and we'll set it equal to, and then we'll drag in our card manager reference here and get selected monster from the card manager script. And then we'll do an if statement to check if attacking card is not null. And we also want to make sure that the defending card is on the opponent's battlefield, so we can come up and just copy the opponent cards on battlefield array, and we can check if, I'm going to rename card to defending card there, we'll check if defending card in opponent cards on battlefield. And if both those conditions are met, we'll call the attack function, which already exists in here, and that takes in an attacking card and a defending card, which we have, and it also takes in who is attacking, and in this case the player is attacking, so we'll pass player in quotes. And one more thing to do before we test this is to come up to the attack function, and if this is called and the attacker is player, we are going to want to set selected monster equal to null, and since that's in the card manager, we're going to have to drag in that reference first. And if we test this now, you can see you can select cards perfectly, but you can attack twice at the same time, so we want to make sure that you can only attack if you're not already attacking. So let's go up to the top of the battle manager script and declare a new variable called player is attacking, and we'll default this to false. And now we have to set this variable, so down in the direct attack function, if the attacker is the player, we'll set player is attacking equal to true. Then at the bottom of this function, we'll do another if statement to check if the attacker is player, and if it is, we'll set player is attacking equal to false. And then also down in the attack function, if it's the player attacking, we'll set player is attacking equal to true. And then finally, at the bottom of this function, if it was the player attacking, we will set player is attacking equal to false. Then in the card manager script, we're going to go to the card clicked function, and after where we're checking if it's the opponent's turn, we're going to add a new if condition, and we'll drag in a reference to our battle manager so we can access the player is attacking variable, and we'll check if the player isn't attacking, and then we'll indent this code below it so that this code will only run if the condition is met. Then we'll go back to the battle manager script, and we'll come down to the enemy card selected function, and here we have two conditions on one line. I'm just going to break them into two separate lines. So we'll have if attacking card, and then we'll have if defending card in opponent cards on battlefield. Then I'm going to add a third if condition, if player is attacking equals false, and if all those conditions are met, then we'll attack. We can run this now and give it a test, and you'll see that you can't attack twice at once. You have to wait for the first attack to go through before selecting or attacking with a monster again, and you can only attack on your turn. One more thing to fix is to disable the end turn button just while we're attacking. So if it's the player attacking in the direct attack function, I'll disable the end turn button and set its visible property to false. And then at the end of the function, I'll re-enable the button and I'll set its visibility to true. And then we'll do the exact same thing for the attack function. If the player is attacking, we'll disable the button and hide it. And then at the end of the function, when the attack is finished, if the player was attacking, we'll re-enable the button and show it again. As you can see here, when I gave this a test and tried to attack, I got an error, and that's because I'm looking for a node called button, but we called our button end turn button. So I'm just going to replace everywhere I have that button reference with the end turn button reference. And then the very last thing we have to do is come down to the enemy card selected function. And just before we attack, we're going to get a reference to card manager and set selected monster equal to null. And that's it. That's attacking and direct attacking working for the opponent and the player. If you found this video helpful, please consider dropping a like below. The next video I'm going to release is going to be on card abilities, which is going to be really fun, so make sure to stay tuned for that, and subscribe for upcoming tutorials and devlogs.